Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. For 2 straight weeks, the United States has staged one attack after another on Iran's critical infrastructure. The strategy is to bleed Iran's critical infrastructure, to debilitate the Iranian military force, and to try and create disaffection amongst the Iranian masses. The Iranian response has been to strike back at the American military bases that are spread across the Gulf region. And now, there is a new problem. The Iranian missiles that have been unleashed appear to be much faster, and to the surprise of the American military strategists, they appear to become more accurate and deadlier than how they had behaved in the previous round of conflict. Contrary to Donald Trump and his War Secretary Pete Hexet's claims that the United States has crippled the Iranian missile capabilities, the evidence from the ground points to Iran adapting its tactics to the changing realities of warfare. For Donald Trump, the Strait of Hormuz is a prestige issue. If he walks away from this war, letting Iran exercise sovereignty over one of the world's most crucial choke points, then it would be a strategic military defeat of a nature that the United States has never seen in its 250-year-old history. And with the Houthis now getting involved in action and shutting down the Red Sea corridor for Saudi oil, the longer this war drags on, the faster the world economy will plunge into a recession. So the question is this: how far does Donald Trump want to push this war to deny Iran control over the Strait of Hormuz? Our export tells you more. This video, released by the US CENTCOM, will give you a glimpse of the scale of the attacks the United States is carrying out in Iran. Night after night, the Americans have targeted infrastructure that they claim is Iran's drone storage facilities, military command centers, communication networks, and coastal surveillance sites. Iranian ports such as Bandar Abbas have borne the brunt of some of the worst American attacks. This eyewitness video captures the moment when an American missile slams into Bandar Abbas. Even Iran's Shalamcheh border crossing with Iraq came under attack by the American missiles. According to the Iranian state media, at least about 2 people were killed and 11 others were injured in this attack at the Shalamcheh border crossing. Donald Trump has vowed to destroy a major bridge or a power plant every time Iran shoots at an oil tanker at the Strait of Hormuz. In response, Iran's Joint Military Command has warned that it will target regional oil, gas, electricity, and economic infrastructure and prevent the export of even a single drop of oil. The American strategy is to try and bomb Iran into submission, while the Iranian strategy is to take the American allies in the Gulf hostage and to respond to American fire by bombing the American military targets in the region, and to squeeze the American Gulf allies hard enough till they use their financial leverage at Washington to ask it to sue for peace. In this contest of who blinks first, the victor will be decided by who can endure more pain and for how much longer.
Well, I think there's a lot of them. There's a military exit where we just keep going just the way we are, and we can even make it a heavier dose, and it's knocking out everything they have. Or there's a smarter strategy, and that's you make a deal, and they want to make a deal. I just don't think they're ready yet, but they do want to make a deal. Sometimes they don't want to say they want to make a deal. They want to be the tough guys, but they do want to make a deal. There's 2 ways. I mean, it's you can just keep doing exactly what we're doing and take them apart piece by piece. We could do it in a more rapid fashion, which we might do, or we can negotiate with them, which we're also doing right now. I mean, as we speak, we're talking to them.
Blowing up civilian infrastructure, power plants and bridges is a war crime under international law. And when Donald Trump was questioned about this, he said that he would not respond to that question.
About Iran, you're talking about blowing up civilian power plants and bridges. Much of the civilized world would consider that a war crime. Do you?
I won't respond to that question. Who are you with?
The New York Times.
I figured so. Failing New York Times.
In response to the American attacks, the Iranians too have amplified the scale of their counter-strikes. American military bases in Kuwait, Bahrain and even Jordan have borne the brunt of the Iranian reprisal. 3 American soldiers were killed and others are reported to have sustained injuries in an Iranian attack on the American Muwafiq Salti Air Base in Jordan. The Pentagon has revised its total fatality count from 18 to 14, while more than 450 American soldiers are reported to have sustained injuries. What has surprised the Americans is the speed and accuracy of the Iranian missiles that military experts say have gotten better from the month of March. Especially the Kheiber Shekan missile, the workhorse in the Iranian arsenal, has been used in carrying out some devastating attacks. The Kheiber Shekan is reportedly using a combination of complex flight paths, maneuvers and speeds to confuse the American air defenses. With a range of about 1,500 kilometers, the Kheiber Shekan carries a warhead of over 550 kilograms. The missile is equipped with terminal phase maneuverability and can be launched very rapidly as it has a solid fuel propulsion. Interestingly, the name Kheiber Shekan means the fortress breaker. Besides, the Iranian missiles and drones have reportedly completely moved away from GPS and are now relying on the Chinese Beidou for their navigation, making it that much harder for the United States to mess with the Iranian missile flight trajectories.
We fear neither threats nor will we succumb to the weight of pressures, nor will we tolerate an incorrect language. We have a principled policy and we will continue with this principled policy of our own, preserving the interests of the people of Iran, preserving the rights of the people of Iran, and preserving Iran's rights in the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf region are among our principles and our goals. We pursue these and we fear no one, nor do we back down from any threat until our goals are realized and the rightful demands of the people of Iran are fulfilled. It is natural that we continue our movement.
The Iranians have shown no indication that they are in the mood to relent. And ever since the Sana'a International Airport was bombed on the 13th of July, the Houthis too have jumped into this war. 2 Saudi oil tankers, the Insecurity and Deadlier, have come under attack. The Houthis say they targeted the Saudi tankers with a number of ballistic missiles and drones as they've imposed a blockade on the movement of Saudi oil in the Red Sea corridor. 5 other oil tankers have reportedly changed course in the Red Sea, signaling the Suez Canal to be their new destination.
The criminal Saudi enemy continues its unjust and oppressive siege on our dear people for nearly 12 years, plundering wealth and imposing a comprehensive blockade on ports and airports by land, sea and air, which has exacerbated the suffering of our great people until the situation has reached an unbearable level without any right or justification for that. And this is something that cannot be accepted or tolerated. The Yemeni armed forces announce a maritime embargo against the criminal Saudi enemy based on the equation of a blockade for a blockade, and it will enter into force effective immediately upon the issuance of this statement.
Along with the Strait of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb is another crucial global choke point. An estimated 10 to 12% of the global trade and about 4 to 9 million barrels of oil pass through Bab el-Mandeb. In a span of a fortnight, the price of crude oil has jumped up by over 25%. Brent crude is hovering at around $100 a barrel, and Donald Trump's strategy at this moment appears to be a war without an end. In recent weeks, both Moscow and Kiev have escalated attacks on each other as the US-led talks on bringing an end to the more than 4-year-long war remain effectively frozen. On the 24th of July, at least about 15 people were killed and more than 100 others were injured in Russian attacks on Ukraine, with 10 of them being killed in a ballistic missile strike just outside of the Ukrainian capital. Meanwhile, an overnight Ukrainian strike killed 6 people and wounded 26 others near the Russian city of Kirov and more than 1,000 kilometers behind the front lines, underlining once again Kiev's rapid development in its long-range capabilities. Our next report tells you more.
The Russia-Ukraine war, which is Europe's biggest conflict since World War II and is well into its fifth year, isn't exhibiting any signs of coming to an end anytime soon. Tens of thousands of civilians have been killed and millions have been uprooted from their homes. Moscow and Kyiv continue to trade attacks despite calls for restraint and resolution of the conflict. On the 23rd of July, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio held talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on the sidelines of an ASEAN foreign ministers meeting in Manila and reiterated that the United States remains prepared to play a constructive role in helping bring an end to the war.
He thinks it's a stupid war, he thinks it's a senseless war, and if we can play a role in bringing it to an end, we're going to use the power and influence of the United States to do so. And we're prepared to do that if the opportunity presents itself, and I hope it has, and I hope it does. And that's what we've communicated consistently, to both sides, by the way.
On the same day, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, while stressing that Moscow remains open for talks, wasn't as optimistic.
I wouldn't be overly optimistic in this situation. It's true that contacts are ongoing, it's always positive, but there is no talk about some sort of new dynamics or a new acceleration.
The very next day, at least 15 people were killed and over 100 were wounded in Russian attacks on Ukraine. At least 10 of these were killed and dozens others were injured in ballistic missile strikes in the Kyiv region. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported explosions in the city and called on residents to stay in shelters as air defense systems were operating. In the city of Slovyansk, 5 people were killed and 9 others injured after Moscow dropped 2 aviation bombs on the city. Analysts are of the opinion that the Russian ballistic attacks, especially during the daytime hours, herald a new beginning. Meanwhile, in Russia's Kirov region on Friday, 6 people were killed and 26 injured in a Ukrainian missile attack on a factory. Ukraine also attacked the warehouses of Wildberries, Russia's biggest online retailer in St. Petersburg and in the surrounding Leningrad region, and in Simferopol, the main city in Crimea. It is to be noted, the Wildberries warehouses have been targeted 4 times within a week. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed to have shot down 571 Ukrainian drones overnight in one of the largest barrages sent by Kyiv, targeting more than a dozen Russian regions and the annexed Crimea region. Following months of drone attacks on oil depots and refineries, Kyiv has now trained its sights on logistics hubs used by Russians to buy military equipment and disrupting supplies to the Russian army. The recent escalation in attacks, both by Kyiv and Moscow, only confirms that there is no end in sight to Europe's biggest conflict since World War II.
On the 22nd of July, at least 20 people were killed in northwest Nigeria by armed gang members who attacked villages in the Zamfara state, highlighting once again the insecurity in the region. A day earlier, at least 3 suspected bandits had been killed by security forces, and a businessman was rescued in the country's Kwara state, according to Nigeria's Punch News website. The Wednesday attack has come on the heels of escalating violence in northwest and central Nigeria, where armed gangs or bandits have raided villages in recent weeks. So what is happening in Nigeria at this moment? Our next report tells you more.
The Federal Republic of Nigeria is plagued with insecurity on multiple fronts, including a 17-year-long Islamist insurgency in its northeast, separatist violence in the southeast, and frequent deadly clashes between farmers and herders in the central region. On Wednesday afternoon between 2 and 3 p.m. local time, a large number of bandits attacked several villages in Talata Mafara in the northwestern Zamfara region, killing more than 20 people across 5 villages. In addition to the villagers killed, 3 others were wounded by gunfire and were transferred to a hospital in neighboring Sokoto state. According to local residents, the raid began at around 2 p.m. and went unhindered for close to 3 hours. What's worse, some of the residents accused the local security forces of not intervening. Reportedly, the attackers also rustled a large number of livestock. In northwest and central Nigeria, armed gangs, locally infamous as bandits, have for years preyed on rural communities, raiding villages, kidnapping residents for ransom, and burning homes after looting them is their modus operandi. In 2024, attackers earned more than $1.6 million in ransom payments, and that's according to SBM intelligence. The situation has been worsened by a security crisis, partly fueled by the Boko Haram rebellion in the country's northeast. In a major victory for Nigerian security forces earlier this month, dozens of students and teachers were rescued, an agonizing 56 days after they were kidnapped from 3 schools in the northwestern state of Oyo. Addressing the media outside the military clinic where the pupils were treated, Oyo Governor Seyi Makinde reassured that family visits were being organized.
Happy to be out of captivity, just like any of us. When your freedom is taken away, it's a different set of mind. But they are glad to be back. Some of them are still very frail. They have to do quite a bit of medical intervention, post-traumatic issues. We'll watch them over the next 48 hours. So by Monday, we think an assessment will be done, and maybe there will be a formal transfer from the military to the state, and then we can manage the process from that point forward.
According to a statement issued by President Bola Tinubu, 8 of the suspected kidnappers were arrested and an unspecified number were killed by the security forces. The Nigerian army acknowledged that security forces too suffered casualties during the rescue of over 40 kidnapped school children and teachers. Defense Minister Christopher Musa had said that the kidnappers had tried to use the students as leverage with the Nigerian government, which is holding some of their commanders. The shock kidnapping in Oyo State had sent shockwaves throughout the country, where many had long written off such violence as a problem confined to the north.
Notwithstanding the release of the kidnapped schoolchildren, the challenge of this multiple front war is proving rather daunting for President Bola Tinubu, who is seeking re-election in January and needs to address the insecurity situation urgently.
On the 24th of July, the Philippine Coast Guard accused its Chinese counterpart of firing water cannon at the Filipino government vessels near a disputed shoal for a second consecutive day. The Friday confrontation in the South China Sea between the two countries was the third one of the week. And not unlike in the past, both Manila and Beijing have accused each other of being the agent provocateur. It is to be noted that China claims almost the entire of the South China Sea and has repeatedly sought to assert its sovereignty. So what is at the root of these contesting claims by these two nations? Our next report tells you more.
It was a tense week in terms of Beijing-Manila bilateral relations, with the vessels from both countries clashing near contested reefs, and both countries accusing each other of being the agent provocateur. The week began with a confrontation at the disputed Second Thomas Shoal. The Armed Forces of the Philippines said a Chinese Coast Guard rigid-hull inflatable boat with 8 personnel approached within close range of its grounded warship on the Second Thomas Shoal and took photos and videos. when 2 Philippine Navy boats moved to drive the Chinese vessel away. Its personnel reacted violently and aggressively by striking Philippine Navy personnel with a wooden baton, necessitating a medical evacuation. Beijing, however, accused Manila of provoking the incident.
On July 20th, during the China Coast Guard's routine law enforcement and rights protection operations in the waters near Renai Reef, 2 small boats from the illegally grounded Philippine military vessel deliberately approached and collided with Chinese vessels in a dangerous manner and violently attacked Chinese law enforcement personnel. China had no choice but to respond resolutely in accordance with the law. After the incident, however, the Philippine side sought to shift the blame onto China, distorted the facts, and engaged in extensive sensationalization and hype. China expresses its strong dissatisfaction with and firm opposition to the Philippines' actions. This morning, China lodged a solemn diplomatic protest with the Philippine ambassador to China.
A couple of days after both countries traded accusations of provoking tensions in the contested South China Sea, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Philippine Foreign Secretary Maria Teresa Lazaro met on the sidelines of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Manila. The very next day, the Philippines accused the Chinese Coast Guard of employing water cannon and dangerous maneuvers at the Scarborough Shoal, one of Asia's most contested maritime sites. On Friday, as the top diplomats wrapped up the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Manila, the Philippine Coast Guard said that a Chinese vessel conducted a reckless maneuver, coming within 7 meters of the BRP Datu Paduhinong, a Philippine fisheries boat, and hitting it with a water cannon blast. 2 other ships, the BRP Datu Cabello and the BRP Cape San Agustin, were also targeted with water cannon but not hit, according to the Philippine Coast Guard. China's foreign ministry pinned the blame on the Philippine vessels, claiming they deliberately intruded first.
Huangyandao is China's inherent territory. The Philippine vessels deliberately intruded first, and the measures taken by the Chinese side to safeguard its rights and security were reasonable, lawful, and conducted in a professional and standard manner that leaves no room for criticism. The Philippine side should immediately cease its infringing and provocative actions, as well as its hype and sensationalism.
Noteworthy is the fact that China claims almost the entire South China Sea and has repeatedly sought to assert its sovereignty. But China and Philippines are not the only claimants of the strategic waterway. Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam and Taiwan also have overlapping claims to this major global trade route, believed to be sitting atop rich undersea deposits of oil and natural gas. With both Manila and Beijing accusing each other of being the agent provocateur, the recent escalatory actions threaten to undermine regional peace and stability.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. If you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.